Thank you, Andrew. Our next speaker, I'd like to introduce you to Rachael Mann. Rachael is the founder and managing director for an educational consulting company called Teach Like TED. She's also the co-author of a soon-to-be released book called The Martians in Your Classroom. There is a website for that, and you can search it and see what that book is all about. In her work with Teach Like TED, she provides tools and techniques for teachers and students to help them with, and I love this, presentation literacy. That's a really cool way to say public speaking. When I was a kid, it was public speaking. Who likes public speaking, right? So what she does is she works with teachers, she works with students, she provides them tools, and she helps them find their voice in really creative ways. In her presentation today, she's going to share some of these tools and the experiences that she's had with some of these students in her program. So please help me welcome to the stage Rachael Mann. Thank you, Rachael.
Thank you. All right, well, what an amazing act to follow. Andrew had a message that I was listening in the back and thinking, wow, I wish that I had heard that when I was in high school. So, very powerful message. All right, so today I'm going to talk to you about presentation literacy. And I want to start off by talking about some famous people that you may recognize their names who really defeated some odds in their lives. You've probably heard of Rachel Carson, who was a famous scientist, and then Princess Diana, Julia Roberts, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, even Gandhi. 6 names we all recognize, right? But what did these 6 people have in common? Right off the bat, you probably think, well, they're famous. They have that household name brand recognition. They have done some amazing things in their lives that have impacted the world around them. But what you may not realize is that these people also have something that most people don't know in common, and that's that they were perceived as very poor public speakers when they first started out their careers. All right, so they had to work really hard to overcome that fear of public speaking. There's a statistic that says that 75% of the people of the population struggle with the fear of public speaking. That's 238 million people. That's a lot. And even the 25% who say that they do not struggle, many of them actually do. They've worked to overcome that fear already. And sometimes when the stakes are high, those fears will come back. So it's not something that there's an elite population. Well, there are a few. But for the most part, people really work to develop these skills. Public speaking statistics also say that the number 1 phobia for most people is public speaking. Number 2 is death. Jerry Seinfeld puts this well when he says that at a funeral, most people would rather be the guy in the coffin than having to stand up and give the eulogy. Now, I personally can relate to that. As a student in high school, I was terrified of speaking in public. I was very shy. And I remember when teachers would call on me, my face would turn bright red, and I would be mortified for the rest of the day because I had to answer a question in class. So that was something that I had to work to overcome myself. And when I think back to how I learned to speak in public, it really came down to writing and then speaking. So I would write my speech, and then I would read it and just look up at key moments in between. But it wasn't really learning how to engage with the audience, how to communicate. And a lot of it was trial by fire. When I would mess up or make a mistake, I would find out that I did something wrong. In college, I had a professor who had counted how many times I said, She then announced it to the entire class. I was mortified. I went back to my dorm room, called my mom, and said, I am dropping out of the teacher prep program. And my mom, being an educator herself, she was very sympathetic and said something along the lines of, suck it up, buttercup. And I received similar feedback from other people as well. And I decided, I'm just going to finish this and then see what happens. But I found that I actually not only felt more comfortable speaking to students, but I was actually pretty good at it and could connect to them. In front of peers, that was a completely different story. In 2013, I transitioned from my teaching career to working at the Arizona Department of Education. Soon after, I was asked to take over as the Ed Rising State Director, and in that role, part of my responsibilities was to train this group of students in public speaking. So I realized at this point that it was time for me to really wrap my head around this whole public speaking thing and figure it out myself. I decided that instead of following the traditional routes, that we would look at TED Talks and dissect the TED Talks to see what really worked. I loved watching TED Talks, but what was the brain science behind how they connected with their audiences? And as we dissected and looked for what they did right instead of focusing on what they did wrong, I watched my students, their skills really transform, but I also noticed my own comfort level and my own skills transform as well. Now, a couple of transformational stories and doors that were opened as a result of these kids learning how to use their voice. First, we have Samantha. Samantha worked very hard at really developing her skills, and by the end of her first year as a state officer, she was speaking at state and national conferences. She was invited to the White House, which meant I was invited to the White House, and it was for the Celebrating CTE Innovations event. And we were literally feet away from the First Lady as she really spoke about education and the power of education. At the end of the day, they asked students if they would like to share the impact that their role in CTE had played on their lives. Samantha was the last student to share her story that day, and she got up and just really encouraged the other students to use what they had learned and to help others with it. How cool is that? What an amazing experience. Now, Samantha is currently a first-generation student, and she's majoring in political science because she wants to use her voice to help others in the community who can't necessarily speak for themselves. Another student who had an amazing experience such as this was Lenin. Now, Lenin worked really hard at his public speaking skills as well, and he competed in the Ed Rising State Conference public speaking event, won 5th place during his first year, but he wasn't satisfied with that. Even though it took him to national competition in DC, he worked even harder the following year to develop these skills, and as a result, he won 1st place at state, went on to nationals in Boston, won 1st place there in the entire nation, and the judges were so impressed with his message that they asked him to speak at the closing ceremony in front of this national delegation. He continued to develop his voice and his skills and is now a freshman at ASU College. He has keynoted multiple events. His most recent accomplishment was in Nashville this past December, where he was invited to speak at the Vision Conference in front of thousands of people. And he uses his voice for education reform. He wants to be an educator, and he also spends his free time volunteering to work with high school students and coaching them in their public speaking. Now, all of these students had transformational stories as a result of learning to use their voice. Ideas really do change the world around us. And when we empower students with a belief in their ideas, they can take those ideas, communicate them in a way that they'll actually create that next world for us. When you think about JFK, he used his voice to get people to believe in something that seemed very impossible, sending man to the moon. But because he had such a compelling message, people believed in that impossible idea, and before you know it, that idea was possible. We accomplished that. For our students, when we give them that power and that belief that their ideas change the world, it gives them a new perspective. It gives them a new way of looking at the world around them. It also gives them the courage to stand up and say something and to risk ridicule because they believe in that power of their idea. One of the biggest skills that people are missing is the ability to communicate, and we know that this is such a valuable workplace skill that everyone wants to see. This is a quote by Anna Marie Neal, just talking about how this is something that they see missing quite a bit, and that we need to spend more time honing in education in order to prepare kids for their future. Presentation literacy is something that really does involve all those different components. It's not just a matter of assigning public speaking assignments. It's actually irresponsible to ask a student to stand up and speak until you've actually given them the skills to do so. And I'm guilty of that. As an educator, I would assign public speaking assignments and think that I was doing due diligence. But we really have to provide them with that comfortable place to develop those skills. 80% of stage fright can be cured by preparation. So that one piece alone, letting students know that no, winging it is not okay. You may think that you're great at just standing on stage and doing impromptu, but most likely that preparation is going to make you much more effective. We hear people say this, practice makes perfect, But that's not actually true. Practice makes permanence, so it's better to learn those skills the correct way when they're young than having to unlearn bad skills later in life. That's true not just in education and public speaking, it's sports, pretty much anything. We set the tone as educators. When we provide that safe environment for students to grow and to use their voice, we empower them, and their ideas can then create a ripple effect that can change the world around us. Now, these are my nieces and nephews, ranging in ages from 7 to 16. And this past Thanksgiving, my father looked around the room, it was after the Thanksgiving dinner, and saw everyone on their devices and finally had to say something. He spoke up and said, I just miss the days when people would talk to each other. My 16-year-old niece, Reagan, she looks up from her device for a moment and says, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, it used to be we would have conversations, but now look at everyone. Everyone's on their devices." In all her innocence, she holds up her cell phone and says, "I don't know about you, but I'm talking to 4 people right now." And what I really love about that is that it shows that how, not that we want technology to create this divide, but it shows how our students really think differently. And when it comes down to it, we're moving towards a global workforce. So teaching kids how to communicate globally, that's a critical skill. According for the future or the Institute for the Future, they say that in the next 20 years, we're going to see a much more interconnected global workforce. Instead of having to go out and find jobs, work is going to go to the best talent. You're not limited to the local people around you. You really can seek out the best. And with that, that means that those skills are going to become more critical. So we have to find ways to bridge the gap between education and geography to teach those skills in communication. Virtual communication, virtual calls and meetings, that's becoming more common. I have at least 2 video calls every week, and that's going to increase even more so for students. But there's some really cool technology for teaching these skills. One of them that I love is Video Teleprompter Lite. There's a paid version, don't worry about that, go with the free version. But with this, students are able to put their script into the phone, and then when they hit play, they can set the pace so that they can practice slowing down their speech. And they can see themselves and really pay attention to their facial expressions. So sometimes I know for myself, I have a tendency to mean mug when I'm speaking, so they can work on smiling while they're talking or slowing down the rate. And then when they go back after they've recorded this video, it doesn't show the words, it just shows them speaking. So it also helps them gain that confidence for virtual communications. Speak with Confidence. This is an app by PromptSmart that is, instead of using a teleprompter or having note cards or papers for your script, you actually have an app that listens to your voice. It has voice recognition. So if you stop while you're talking, it actually pauses. And then when you start speaking again, then it'll pick up there. So if someone asks a question or you go off on a little tangent, you're still on track. Speech in minutes is another one. This one, usually talks are timed. For today, we have an 18-minute talk. So for this one, you put in how many words you've written for your speech, and then it'll tell you an estimate of how many minutes it'll take to go through your speech. Recently, I was invited to be a guest speaker in Guam, which is over 6,000 miles away. But because of technology, I was able to be in my living room with the students in their classroom. It was 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night in Phoenix, 1 o'clock on Thursday, the following day, for the students. So they immediately greeted me by saying, "Welcome to the future," and they referred to me as the time traveler throughout the rest of the conversation. So it really does bridge the gaps and bridges those divides. How Just Say is an awesome app because you're able to go in, see how to pronounce a word if you're not sure, which sometimes even a simple word can be mispronounced and really cause a speaker to stumble, even if they're an experienced speaker. So this helps them to know how to pronounce the word in advance. If there's different dialects, it'll show that as well. And it'll also show them how to say the word in different languages too, which is great for that global collaboration. Skype has been around forever, but there's some really cool tools for college students that they're working on and continue to develop. You can practice your interview skills. You can connect with your advisor using Skype. You can even connect with students in other countries to practice learning a new language. Flipgrid is one of my favorite apps. This is a platform where educators can pose a prompt, and then students respond orally to that prompt. They can then go in and even respond to their peers' prompts, and it creates a grid. It almost looks like a Brady Bunch scenario. The teacher can go back and give feedback as well, but they can also connect globally, so they can connect with other people around the world and even crowdsource answers to responses and prompts. Love that. Give a little upbeatness to it. Okay, we talked about Google Meets, Google Hangouts, but there's some other applications as well that are really fantastic. I had a student who had a presentation coming up the following day that she was really nervous about. She wanted me to rehearse with her, and I didn't have time to go over and work with her face-to-face. So after school, as she's walking across campus, she calls me through Google Hangout and literally practices her talk as she's walking across the campus. Now, this can be a little dangerous, so be careful with it if your student's trying to walk and talk. However, she totally nailed the talk the next day, so it was really cool to be able to have that interaction. I was coaching a group of students for an event at GCU called The Voices of the Youth, and we used video conferencing to be able to coach because it was 4 different schools that spanned across 4 hours across the state. So most of it was done through video conferencing, and then I would go from time to the schools to work with students in person. One student in particular had an amazing story. When I got to the school to meet with her, she didn't have a script with her. In fact, she did not even know what she was going to talk about. I noticed that she was wearing scrubs, so I asked her to tell me a little bit more about where she'd just come from. And she was in a medical assisting program and said that she wanted to become a doctor someday. She said that her interest in the medical field was spawned because when she was 14, her father had died. Her father was in the United States illegally, and because of that, he was not able to receive an organ to save his own life. Yet he was able to donate every organ and his tissues to save the lives of others and drastically improve the lives of people as well. I looked at her and I said, Jocelyn, that's it. That's your story. She was so close to it that she couldn't even see that that was her story. So she named her talk, Why Can't I Have a Kidney? And she even invited politicians to come to the event just to create that awareness, to see that if in the future people who are coming here to create a better life, that we can do more to help them. That's the power of student voice.
Oh, that was incredible, and that was so encouraging. And just this whole experience and getting to share our stories is probably one of the best things that has happened in my high school career and one of the most memorable. So I'm really appreciative of this. So thank you.
That was her feedback during one of our video meetings afterwards to talk about how the event had went. I talked to her recently, and she mentioned that that's still her #1 experience of her 4 years in high school. So that really shows you that transformative experience that they have. And in fact, it really was something outside of her high school day. There's lots of technology tools out there, and more are being developed all the time. But using those platforms, it's important, but it's also important to know when to stand back and really pay attention to our 3-dimensional world. So yes, the technology is fantastic, but how can we make sure that we're teaching students to communicate in both the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional realms in an effective way? So remembering those face-to-face interactions and focusing on those are important to find that balance. And sometimes it's a matter of knowing when less is more. So when to step back and say less, because that can actually create a bigger statement sometimes. When we give students a voice, we give them a better tomorrow. Help your students find that message, that compelling message that's so important that they can't not say it, even if their knees and their voice shakes. It's so important to them. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Here's my contact information. Thank you for being here today, and enjoy the rest of the talks.